All right, now I will introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mark Legreid. He is the founder of New Technology Enterprises, Inc. Mark is going to be going into some more science for us here and discussing tissue culture and cloning in cannabis. Mark trains professionals on how to use elite cloning procedures, micropropagation in a sterile environment, TC lab setup, and more. He manages lab operators and executes methodologies for plant tissue culture production goals.
Hello, and congratulations on your interest in elite tissue culture cloning for cannabis and hemp. My name is Mark Legreid. I am the founder of New Technology Enterprises Incorporated. We're located in Oceano, and we're going to cover the basics of tissue culture applications for cannabis today. I'm really excited about this because I really believe that tissue culture is going to be the only way that the clone market can enter into a homogeneous product. Right now we have a lot of variations and strains. When you buy a sour diesel strain, for example, I've bought thousands of sour diesel strains at one time, and when you put them in the ground, they all look pretty much the same, but after a few months they're quite different, like as many as 10 different phenotypes, which causes a lot of problems. Like they'll trigger to flower on a different day, they'll branch differently, so the netting needs to be different. The feeding schedules will be off of each phenotype because when they trigger the first day, they want different food. So with tissue culture, if you're able to plant 100,000 identical plants all from the same mother plant, they require the same nutrient schedule, they all trigger the same day, they're going to test the same. You could actually pre-sell the clones because they're so predictable, and it's going to enter into the same type of market that fruits and vegetables, strawberries, bananas, they all use tissue culture because it's such a predictable product. So anyways, I'm really excited about that, and I think that if you sit through this video and get the concepts that I'm presenting, you'll see that tissue culture is the way to go. I want to point out right off the bat that I'm not a great speaker. I'm going to be reading off of a script, and this was kind of a rush speech, but I'm going to plow through it, and when you have questions, you can catch me in the question and answer session after the speech, or you can email me at off of my website, phenoclones.com. We're just getting a training program together for people that want to get into tissue culture. It's going to be an online course. It'll go in depth to the consulting level. It'll teach people how to set up a lab. If you're a hobbyist, it'll teach you how to store genetics pretty much in your closet and make them available. So the online course, it's in development, and I'm just going to be touching on most of the topics today, and so we'll catch up later. I know a lot of you may not want to get into tissue culture for several months, but if you're gearing up for spring, it's a good time to start banking your stock. So we'll get into all of that. I'm about to get into reading my script, so I hope you enjoy the presentation, and definitely feel free to comment or question afterwards and send me some emails. We're located in California on the Central Coast in Oceano, and my past experience has been with cultivation and breeding seeds. During the next half hour or so, I'm going to be sharing with you the processes for cloning methods that we're using, listed on the screen. Dip and seal, which is basically a way to clone plants and transport them without them wilting, or if you're in the desert, like I've done some desert grows where it's just hot and humid and you don't have a climate-controlled environment and the clones don't do good. Dip and seal is a very basic process it'll make your plants grow good in a hot, dry climate. And that's just, or if you're transporting, you used to take thousands of clones through the desert and then move them around, and they would wilt during the transport. So that's pretty much what dip and seal is about. The scrub and root is a shortcut of tissue culture where you're not really going into a sterile environment. You're basically bleaching the plants in a solution, 10% bleach water, and killing off, any kind of bugs or eggs, powdery mildew on the surface. It won't kill anything viral on the inside, but it'll take care of 90% of your problems. It takes a few minutes extra, but it pays for itself for sure. And then there's a couple of versions of that, and then there's also a couple versions of streamlined versions of tissue culture that we're going to look at, and it's just a overview. A lot of it is, sterilization, initiation, how to, put it in the culture and all that. And so that's the main focus of our session, is to just get you familiar with these procedures. And once you see the concept of replicating, like out of a crop of 10,000, you might have one exceptional plant. And if you're able to clone that identical, it might boost production by 30%. And so that's kind of the concept that I'm pushing today. And the other main point today, I just want to bring it up front, is that the market is so unhomogeneous, inconsistent. You don't, I've bought thousands of clones from reputable nurseries, and they look great when you get them, but the market is in its infancy, and the companies that get into tissue culture now are going to be able to provide homogeneous product, and they're going to be taking the lion's share of the market. Maybe the third subpoint here is that there's large corporations that, when they enter the market, they're being cautious because of legality and basically because of shipping. But when they're able to ship 500,000 clones that are superior to all the other nurseries' clones, it's going to take over the market. And so I really want to help the smaller growers, medium-sized growers, gear up, because I'm guessing in about 3 years there'll be robotic clone-making systems, and the traditional cloning nurseries are basically going to get wiped out. So those are the three main points I want to bring out up front. And, so basically with tissue culture, you're able to flesh out hidden disease cycles and mass-produce cultures of a superior phenotype. Another thing you could do is patent a strain and be able to market that in the future. You can bank tissue culture clones without much maintenance, building up millions of them and distributing them as the market demands. This is one of them. This is a sample of a clone that's been in tissue culture for a few weeks, and this is the shortcut method where we just bleached it. You put it in this sugary solution with hormones and vitamins, everything the plant needs. It's now sterile on the outside. I know this plant doesn't have a virus, and then it's just cloned in the traditional way. So this is one of the shortcuts, and we're going to get into all of that. I'm just got to bring out the main points first, because I want to drive it home that tissue culture will be taking over, and it's time to get on the bandwagon while there's not much competition. All the modern plant food propagations for the ornamental plants, such as we have orchids are common tissue culture, bananas, strawberries. Those standard methods that they use are going to be the same for cannabis and hemp. The methods I'm showing are just the tip of the iceberg. Tissue culture has many more applications for cannabis. They get very technical, and advanced training is required for more complicated procedures. But in the long run, you're actually saving labor and problems and streamlining a predictable business model. So this is a good place to start. The next slide has some of the logos that of companies that I've been working with. Next slide here. The companies include medicinal marijuana seed sales, Old School Breeders Association, Riverman Genetics, Connecty Farms, San Luis Collective, New Technology Enterprises, and one I haven't put up yet is a nursery in Santa Maria. It's Santa Barbara County, Fox and Canyon Farms, where we can grow clones out to the client's specified height and ship them, or they can pick them up. There's another operation, Cannabis Farms, is up by Mendocino. So basically we're in California, but a lot of our clients are delivering us things from other states. We haven't gotten anything from outside the United States, but when you're shipping a specimen, it doesn't have rates, doesn't have THC, so it's pretty much in the gray market as far as the shipping goes. My experience over the last 35 has been on and off up until the last 5 years. It includes nursery operations, indoor-outdoor greenhouse, a lot of illegal stuff back in the day, and that's kind of why it's off and on, kind of a hobby. But I got my first legal permit a few years ago out in California Valley, where I began working with Al McKenzie of Riverman Genetics, an Old School Breeders Association. Those affiliates have been breeding since the 80s, and they've won a lot of awards for their genetics, including half a dozen or so from High Times for strains such as Roadkill Skunk, Love Devotion, Tuna Kush. The list goes on. They're online. They're a very reputable genetics company. We're currently breeding modern strains for hemp and cannabis and multiplying the elite phenotypes. And we're using some advanced tissue culture. Tissue culture is not very popular or common with cannabis and hemp, so there's not a lot of research that's been done, and we're doing a lot of that. So we're coming up with specific formulas for specific strains. We're creating new strains, adapting them to tissue culture, and we basically do a lot of pheno hunting, which is where we plant 10,000 seeds. We find the best plant or two out of that, and then out of that one plant, we multiply it, and we get a homogeneous product. So, a consistent and reliable source of genetics is what the industry is calling for, and that's why I progressed into tissue culture out of seed breeding, which, again, even if you have a great line of seeds, they're all going to exhibit different characteristics when you plant them. And, when you're dealing with an elite phenotype, which is a superior plant within the strain, a phenotype is every plant in sour diesel has a different phenotype, but they're all sour diesel. So when you're able to isolate the best characteristics that you want, maybe it has no mold, and you're going to grow that on the coast, whereas you might want a sour diesel that grows bigger in that dry desert. And so we're basically separating and banking some of these elite strains right now. Let's see, so right now these clones are scarce. You can get some from, Midnight Farms and a bunch or a few other companies, but they're very expensive. But when Segra and these international corporations with huge funding come in, they're going to have a lot of clones that are a lot better at a much lower price. So that's what we're trying to compete with here. So that's where the clone market is today. It's basically in its infancy. It's an unstable supply. They're unpredictable, inconsistent, and when you compare to other markets such as strawberries and bananas, you can see that our clone market has a long ways to go, before it's consistent. So, like, when you buy a wheel for your car or a loaf of bread, or you buy anything, you expect it to be the same. And every market moves toward stabilization. And I'm going to kind of keep going over this point. Tissue culture is really the only way to get a stable supply, and that's who's going to get the market share, the people that are using tissue culture. Tissue culture cloning, it's just a lot of research. It takes a lot longer than you would maybe plan for, but when you get into it ahead of time and work out the kinks for the strains that you're growing, you'll, in the long run, over 10 years or 5 years or maybe even 2 years, you'll save tons of unexpected problems that come with traditional cloning. First, we're going to look at the traditional challenges, and we're going to see what are the characteristics of a superior clone, how they differentiate from traditional or regular clones, and we'll go into the 3 techniques and an overview of the strategies and concepts that we've talked about, and then we'll wrap it up with a question and answer session. The next slide here, we see a picture of Pandora's Box, which represents the challenges associated with traditional cloning. Mother plants are needing to be replaced in traditional cloning. Mother plants have a lot of problems. They have a lot of diseases that can't be seen, and the disease or virus passes on into the clones. And when you're cloning the traditional way, you never know when Pandora's Box is going to open or what's going to come out of it. Sometimes everything is done right in the cloning process, but quality doesn't reveal itself until the clones have been vegetating for a while. And usually when this happens, you don't have another 10,000 clones to replace it, so you just kind of watch them, grow differently and maybe have a loss of vigor, and you just kind of, do the best you can. So this is a problem, the same as uniformity, branching the same, flowering the same day, the inconsistent growths, or I've had crazy bugs come in that it's like, I've never even seen these things before, and I don't know how to deal with them, and it's in the middle of the veg cycle, big problem. Outside of the sterile environment, all growers have experienced problems with these issues, and I'm sure a lot more. It's a lot more than we can put on this slide. And, the mother plants is always the root of the problem. They're kind of like a story that's been told. Every time you have a new mother plant, it's a little bit different. And after a few years, that Alaskan thunderfuck or whatever you're growing, it's not the same. And there's really no way to preserve that strain unless you have it in tissue culture. Strawberries and bananas, what they do is they actually freeze some of the genetics and they grow it out for 6 months, and then they throw all of that stock away. They go back to the freezer, back to the original source. So that's where tissue culture is going. The inconsistency from the mother's plants is noticeable, and just as they get older, they lose vigor, they pick up more problems, they take up a lot of space, and it's just the old method. Next slide here is a visual depicting the old way that I used to do clones and the way that I do them now. The old way, you start with good genetics and then you just battle the host of problems that come with the sterile environment. In the new way, using sterile technique, the clones are much more predictable, and Pandora's Box of problems is left outside of the sterile environment. So when you're using exact replicas of one phenotype, with tissue culture, you can produce unlimited clones, have maximum vigor, and end results of the testing and all of that, the clients are always happy. The plants all test the same, they grow the same. So, today, when you can go to a tissue culture bank that sells orchids, and they sell grapefruit, and they sell strawberries, and they sell maybe 800 species that you can choose from, but cannabis isn't on them. And soon, cannabis will be mass-produced, and they'll be available for these big companies to ship. And again, these large corporations, I just heard a speech recently where other speakers are talking about it, and it's just going to be kind of devastating for the traditional cloning industry. Next slide. Here are a list of some of the benefits that come with tissue culture. With a completely predictable crop, the harvest can be pre-sold like futures in the current agricultural markets. The harvest can be advertised before it's even planted, and back to the test results being the same. It's going to be a lot more predictable, and tissue culture allows for the genetics to be frozen indefinitely. Specimens can be brought out of the freezer and multiplied only as needed, not producing tons of clones because your mother plants can do it and then throwing them out. That's the common method in traditional cloning right now. Is if they don't buy them, you throw them out. What else are you going to do? A lot of successful growers are still doing very well with the traditional methods. They've got great clients. Actually, they have the market share right now. Their tissue culture maybe it's at 1%. But even if they've mastered all the procedures and have a huge number of mother plants, there's no way to guarantee a homogeneous product 6 months or more in the future using mother plants. Anything can happen to them, and if the market demands millions of them, you don't have the mother plants for that right away. So tissue culture also allows growers to use the space once occupied by mother plants, and the vigor of tissue culture genetics is not affected by time or disease. So putting cannabis and hemp into a sterile environment actually restores vigor, to its pristine state. In tissue culture, there are no insects or disease to deal with, and identical clones is what the market is calling for, and tissue culture is the only way to meet this demand. All of the benefits listed on this slide are important. The list goes on. The main point here again is that all markets are demanding homogeneous product, and if you're the company providing that in the next few years, you will get a much better share of the market share, a lot of leverage on your efforts. At first, it's going to take a while to build up to it, but next up on the next slide, it shows a typical tissue culture flow chart. The first step we take is selection, and this is just what we do. Basically, a client would mail us a sample of the strain that they would like us to put into tissue culture, and usually there's a virus and it needs to be flushed out. It might not ever get flushed out, but more than half the time it will. So there's a lot of trial and error that goes into that. Get it certified virus-free, through testing, and then go ahead into the multiplication production. Other clients are going to mail us seeds, and what we'll do is we'll plant them on our nursery, as many seeds as they give us, and our mission with planting the seeds is to find the best clone donors. So maybe we'll plant 10,000 seeds from one strain and see how they develop, and take tissue cultures off of the best looking ones as they get about a foot tall, and then we watch those plants develop, and once they mature, we'll take the very best ones, have them lab tested, see which one is actually the very best, or maybe there's one that grows better in a greenhouse and one of them that grows better, indoors. We'll do variations depending on the client's budget, or if they're growing indoors, then that's obviously where we grow them. But anyways, we get the very best one. All the plants are tagged. The ID numbers on the culture samples are dated, and the plants are dated, and we document notes of the different plants. We videotape them, and if you're a remote client, we'll show you, which ones that would suggest that are multiplied, and then we basically harvest them, more lab testing, and then the elite phenotypes of each strain are then multiplied according to their production requirements. If they want 1,000 every month or 100,000 every 3 months. Then we build the bank up to that. We store them, route them, deliver them, or make them available for pickup according to the scheduling agreements with the client. Most of our clients only use our service as long as needed while they're setting up a lab on site. And this just makes more sense. And so our nursery services are limited to clients that are actually putting up a lab because we don't have enough room to do millions of clones for other clients. Next slide. Flood and market with tissue culture clones is kind of what I see coming. It's my opinion, but again, it's the reason why you would want to have your own lab, maybe patent your own strains, so that the traditional growers can compete with these big companies that are going to be taken over in about 5 years if there's nobody else out there to compete with. Best advice I can give is to get into tissue culture now and capitalize on the market. It might be a few years before you really see the benefits, but over a 5-year plan, you're going to do 100 times better than just sticking with a traditional nursery op. The next slide, let's take a look at, this is an ideal timeline for tissue culture multiplication. The timeline above is about as good as it gets. After extensive testing and the creation of optimum formulas for the strain, testing is required for all strains in order to find out what works best, what vitamins they want, what hormones they want, and this method, it can't be taught, within the limited scope of this presentation, but again, we will be having a training course on how to do the testing, how to set up a lab. For beginners, you can set up a lab very cheaply, under $1,000, to just kind of get into the thing of sterile environment while you're researching and getting trained. The next slide here, we'll go over a shortcut version of this method, which can be mastered with minimal training equipment, and it's a very simple procedure. We call it scrub and root. It's not true tissue culture, but it's much simpler, and it does save tons of bug problems. Big operations in Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and California use this method. And in order to move, that's because the demand is changing so fast, they don't need to go into full tissue culture, because by the time you do that, maybe the demand for Blue Dream is gone. But this method, it allows companies to quickly change their grow with the demand, and then still have a cleaner product, and so less problems to deal with. Seasonal market demands, they change, and true tissue culture would be for long term. We want to patent the strain, or it's just such a great strain, we want to get it into the true tissue culture. But if there's a sudden demand for strawberry cough or some kind of strain you want to grow, check this out on the next slide. We have simplified scrub and root, which uses 0 sterile media, and it does sterilize the outside of the plant. So just doing a little extra step, you're going to go 5% bleach in the water. You're going to wash the plants. You're going to rinse off the bleach, and then trim off any, do a second trimming on the bottom stem. So, we'll wash this in bleach and then cut it again so that the bleach that's soaked into the stem is removed, because you don't want to be trying to grow dead tissue, and the bleach will kill the tissue when it gets into the plant. So you wash it in bleach, and you rinse the bleach water off, you cut it again, and then you just stick it into your rock wool or whatever your rooting media is. That's also at phenoclones.com. You can download some instructions just by sending us an email and requesting it. We haven't fully developed this website yet. We're going to advertise once our courses are done, but for now, if you want to get the free info on the dip and seal technique, just go ahead and email me. Now, the next slide here, it's called dip and seal, and all that is taking there's a lot of products out there, and the one that I'm using in this slideshow, like the other ones, they say to spray the plants with this stuff, and then it basically seals them like a glue. But what we found that works better is you basically get a pile of cloning material, and you'll grab 4 or 5 of them at the same time, all at the base, and you're going to dip all 5 clones or whatever you grabbed into use this coffee cup here, but you'll dip the clones into the solution, and then you're going to whip off that excess, whip it good, so that it comes off. And then you'll grab each one and take the bottom stem and dip it into your rooting hormone, Clone X or whatever, put it into the plug, and then none of that sealant has gone onto where the rooting hormone goes. You put that in your cloning tray. You could drive for 2 days with it in the sun, and it really holds all that moisture in the plant so it doesn't wilt. So it's just a little technique I'm throwing in here at the end. So with all of this going on, you're going to need advanced training. This is the how to get started slide, and you're going to need the training. You're going to need a consultant, online coach. Buy one of our starter kits online. They should be available within 3 weeks, but everything takes longer. Again, I apologize for my speaking. So I'm not a great speaker, but it was an opportunity that came up, and I thought I could share some information. So I'm really excited about this. Well, our training program obviously will have professional speakers doing the training, and I hope you guys got some value out of this. We're going to move on into the question and answer session, and I look forward to hearing from anybody, and I'm definitely going to be responding to any kind of questions online. And anyways, I thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.